All right. Hi, everyone. So I think we can begin. We have around 300 participants at the moment. So yes, good day. So my name is Lilette and I will be your host and moderator for today's masterclass session. So I'm basically based in Singapore. Yep. And together with me today are my other co-hosts and my co-moderator from other countries. So please give me just a quick of your time to introduce each one of them, and they will greet you and welcome you. It could be in English or it could be in their own local language. So first one, can we please have Wei? Hi, Wei. Wei is from Myanmar. Wei, would you mind to turn on your video? And yes, please welcome our participants.
Hello အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါကျွန်မနာမည်ဝေပါကျွန်မကဒီ IDP IELTS ဖြစ်တဲ့ Chuyên IELTS Test Center ကဒီစီတယောက်ဖြစ်ပါရဲ့ရှင်ဒီမှာအခုဒီ webinar လေးမှာ IELTS နဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့တည်တင်တည်တိုက်တဲ့ဟာတွေအားလုံးကိုသိရှိသွားပြီးလိုအပ်တဲ့ passport ရပါစေလို့ဆုမွန်ကောင်းတောင်းပေးပါရဲ့ရှင်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်
Thank you so much, Race. And next one, we have our good friend from Indonesia. Hi, Ruli.
Hai Lilet, selamat datang atau selamat bergabung dalam acara IELTS Masterclass hari ini. Apabila nanti ada pertanyaan yang ingin diajukan, silahkan bisa di-drop di chat box atau ke Q&A session. Terima kasih.
Thank you, terima kasih. And next one, we also have someone from Thailand. Hi, New. Would you be able to turn on your camera? So, all right, please welcome our participants.
สวัสดีค่ะทุกคนนะคะพี่นิวนะคะเป็นตัวแทนจาก IELTS ประเทศไทยนะคะวันนี้ก็ขอให้ทุกคนได้เรียนรู้จากคุณแจ็คกะลีนเยอะๆนะคะแล้วก็ถ้ามีคำถามอะไรก็สอบถามในแชทบ็อกซ์หรือว่าใน Q&A ได้เลยค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you so much, everyone. So now we are, I think, around 400 in this Zoom session. So let's proceed. So basically, maybe some of you are wondering, what is this IELTS Masterclass all about? So this session focuses on the 4 components or the 4 skills of IELTS test. So listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So from this workshop today, we hope that you'll get practical tips on how to enhance your English skills and avoid common mistakes while taking the IELTS test. And of course, we would like you to get a better understanding of the assessment criteria and how your skills will be scored. And finally, of course, you will learn from an official IELTS expert who will guide you and answer your questions. So before proceeding further, if you are joining us via Zoom, feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A box or even in the chat box. And my lovely co-hosts, my co-moderators will surely assist. And towards the end, if there are any questions that we are not able to answer, definitely we will direct it to our IELTS expert. And if you are following along with us on Facebook Live, please share your questions in the comment section and I will read this out to our IELTS expert at the end of the webinar. So before proceeding again, finally, I would like to introduce our IELTS expert for today. So she has been an IELTS teacher and trainer for more than a decade. Armed with an in-depth understanding of IELTS, she has helped hundreds of people from across Asia to prepare well for it. She enjoys sharing tips and strategies to help test takers reach the band score you need. Okay, so without further ado, let us all welcome our IELTS expert today, Miss Jacqueline Fisher. Over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Lilette, as always, for that very nice and embarrassing introduction. Wow, we have a lot of people here this evening. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to be with you this evening. And I see from people putting in the chat box where they're from, that's really great. I saw people from Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, all across the region. And I'm joining you just as with Lilette. I'm not actually at my Hobbit house. I'm in Singapore as well. Yeah. Oh, we have someone from Venezuela. That's really far away. I think it's in the morning there. Goodness me, that's very exciting. And from Vietnam too. How lovely to have you all here. So this evening, as Lilette said, we're going to look at the 4 tests for IELTS. So it's always a bit misleading, isn't it? We're doing the IELTS exam, but we have to do 4 tests. And I'll give you lots of tips and suggestions about how you can really maximize your score. And 6:40 in the morning in Venezuela. Goodness, you're up bright and early. All right, so let's get going. And of course, as Lilette said, please put your questions in the chat. I may not see all of them, but my wonderful co-moderators are very experienced and they will be able to answer most of your questions. And then of course, at the end, any questions that are missed, we will cover them as well. All right, so let's get going. Yeah, so as I mentioned, please use the chat for your questions. And we do have some polls, I think, during this session, just either to find out a bit more about you or to check what you've retained from what we talk about. Yeah, and I won't refer to this so much, but you should have received this masterclass pack. And I really advise you to go through this in your own time. There are lots of really good model answers, particularly for the writing. And that's a really good way to learn more about how to do the writing, is to look at ones that are considered good and start to really understand what the examiners are looking for. So so please access that masterclass pack. I will refer to it a little bit, but really you can really go through that carefully in your own time. So this evening we're going to look at IELTS and I'll give you lots of tips and tell you about what you should do and really what you should avoid. But the thing about IELTS is it's like anything with English, is that you kind of need to, the more you can incorporate English into your life as much as possible, the better you will do. So of course, practicing tests is good, but IELTS is really testing whether you're comfortable and natural with your English. So if possible, what I really advise you to do is work on your English every day and incorporate English as much as possible. So whether that's like listening to the radio, reading, on news websites, watching TV, watching Netflix or Amazon. Yeah, just have lots of English, talking in English as much as you can. So it is more than just practice tests. So this evening we will look at the assessment, as Lilette said, so you really understand what you need to do, and then what the examiners are looking for and what you shouldn't do as well. So that's what we'll be going through. Yeah, so the first thing for you to really work out to know is whether you're doing the academic or the general test. Is our first poll available, Lilette? I'm not sure if it's available today, just the one to find out more about it. Oh, great, thank you. So I'm just going to put up this poll just to find out a little bit more about all of you and which tests you're doing. Oh, I see some comments in the chat. A technical issue. I don't know. I'm not sure if my sound is breaking up or not. I hope not. Okay, so the poll is running. Yeah, so if you can't see the poll, you can also put in the chat whether you're doing academic or general. Yeah, and if you're not sure, let me just quickly explain. So if you're planning to study at an English-speaking institution, usually you do academic. If you're planning to take IELTS for migration, it's usually general, but you do need to check with whoever asked you to do IELTS. Yeah, because sometimes it varies. All right, so let's see. I'm just going to end the poll for now. So most people haven't taken it before, but some of you have. So if you have questions, things that confused you doing it the first time, please feel free to ask. Let's have a look at band scores. So most people need between a 7 and 8. Yeah, okay, good. And some 6, 7. Oh, we have quite a lot more doing academic. That's interesting. But don't worry, we'll talk about both today. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to stop that. And so just so we understand what those band scores mean, because, we throw around these numbers, 7 actually means that your English is good according to IELTS, and we'll look at what that means. And in IELTS, it's a perfect 9. It's not a perfect 10. Yeah, so 9 is a perfect score. So 9 is not an easy score to get. Some people can get 9 in listening and reading sometimes. Yeah. And then even if you turn up to your test and you don't do anything, like for speaking at least, you'll get a 1. Yeah, it's only if you don't turn up at all, you get 0. So, and this is in your masterclass pack. You want to now, yes. So we think, as we said, we think of IELTS as one exam, but actually we have to do 4, don't we? So it's listening, reading, and writing, and this is the order that you do them in. Yeah, and we'll talk about in detail about each test. And then obviously the speaking is separate. So the speaking is done one-on-one. Nowadays, sometimes you do it by a video, or at least the examiner is on video, and sometimes it's face-to-face. It depends on where you are. So do you think for these 3 tests, listening, reading, and writing, do you think that you have a break in between? Can you go grab a coffee after the listening, have a little rest? What do you reckon? No, you can't. It runs straight through. So it's like quite a long exam. It's almost 3 hours. Now, of course, they collect the papers or they stop the test in between, you know, to collect, but there's no break. Okay, so what happens if you do need to go to the bathroom? In the listening test, you cannot leave the room once they start playing the recording. Yeah, so after that, though, of course you can go, but there's no extra time. So the time will keep running. So try not to go too much. Yeah, what can you take into the test? Do you know? There are very few things you can take into the room. Yeah, no, you don't even take a pencil. There's no stationery. All the stationery is given to you. Yes, you can only take your ID and a clear bottle, a clear water bottle. That's it. And maybe if it's cold, you could take like a shawl or a scarf or something if the air conditioning is very cold. Yeah, so that's it. So yeah, you can't, everything else you'll have to put into a locker and everything else is provided. Okay, so we're going to go in through each of these tests. Next question is, which test are you planning to do? Are you planning to do computer delivered or the paper-based? You can let me know in the chat also. Computer, yeah. Computer has become more and more popular, but some people still prefer paper-based. The test itself is the same content. It's just the way you do it is different. So I do see quite a lot of computer, but quite a few paper-based as well. And people always ask me, well, which one's easier? Which one's better? And that question really depends on you. Yeah, so it depends on your skills and what you're comfortable. So someone here is saying that computer is way easier. It really depends on you. So the computer delivered, you have to be comfortable reading on the screen. You have to be comfortable typing, and you have to be comfortable listening for the listening test, listening and typing the answer as you listen. You also have to be comfortable using a mouse and being able to navigate a computer. If all of those things are very difficult for you, then you'd be better off doing the paper-based. Yeah, so when you do the computer, you get your results faster with computer delivered, 3 to 5 days. And then you can usually do it more often. Usually in some countries, it's every day. Yeah, so that's part of the difference. People often ask me which one I would do. And partly because of my age, I would actually do the paper-based because I prefer reading on hard copy. And I actually prefer doing the listening with the hard copy as well, because I can underline more easily. But that's just me and my age. Although the writing, I'm quite comfortable typing, but you have to do all. You can't mix and match. You have to do all on computer or all on paper-based. So yeah. Can you use capital letters? Yeah, you can use capital letters. Yeah, I think you can use it in the computer delivered as well if you want to. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so let's get going. So we've got 4 tests to talk about. So we're going to start with the speaking test. So some tests are different for academic and general, but speaking is the same for everybody. All right, so speaking test. Well, what do you already know about the speaking test? How long is it and how many parts? 3 parts, that's right. Oh, what kind of stationery is provided? Someone's asking. The default is a pencil and an eraser. That's what you'll be given. Even if you're doing computer delivered, there's also some rough paper for you to make notes. Yeah, there are 3 parts and it's 11 to 14 minutes long. That's right. Now, can you let me know also, I'm curious which test is more challenging for you? Which one is the one that you're most worried about? Can you let me know in the chat? Someone's asking about masks. Yes. For the speaking test, I'm just having a look. So a lot of people saying writing, quite a few saying speaking and writing. Reading is hard. Okay. Writing definitely. Yeah, so we have a mixture actually, but it does seem like more people are saying writing and speaking. Yeah, okay, so that's good to know, but don't worry, we'll talk about all of them. Okay, so masks, someone was asking. So this really depends on where you are with your country. Here in Singapore, we're still doing face-to-face with, in the same room, but everyone has a mask. Examiners have a mask, candidates have a mask. And that it's been like almost 2 years now. So the examiners are very used to it. They're used to examining with a mask and listening with the mask. But I do advise you, if you have to wear a mask, wear the paper, the surgical one. Try not to wear the big, thick cloth mask because that's makes it hard to hear. But if you're doing the video call speaking, your examiner will not have a mask and you may be allowed to take yours off. It depends on the country. Okay, so let's get going. Yes, all right, into the speaking. So you are right. It's 11 to 14 minutes and 3 parts. Okay, so as we just said here, so these 3 parts, yeah, we'll talk more about what happens in each part. But first of all, can you tell me, when the examiner is listening to you speak, they only care about 4 things that you do. Do you know what those 4 are? They don't actually care what you wear. They don't care if you have makeup or eye contact. That's not what they care about. Your pronunciation is one, that's right. Coherence, yes, being logical. So that's, yes. The grammar, the vocab, you're right. How fluent you are. Yes, all of those, you've got them. Exactly. Great. So let's talk about these. So first one, fluency and coherence. So together. So what does that mean? You can keep talking. Not too many pauses, not too many, I think, maybe it is, not too much of that. Yeah, you can keep talking. Also, this coherence is important because some people can talk a lot, but you have no idea what they're talking about. There's no logic, right? So logic, how do you be logical? You use linking words. So things like, oh, first of all, I think, on top of that, on the other hand, yeah, so using these linking words to make your speaking logical is important. So that's the first thing. Second one, lexical resource. So this is a fancy word for your vocab. So if you're wanting a 7, which is good, right? 7 or higher, you need to use a few more unusual words. A lot of people will say nice, bad, good. Those words are kind of okay, but they're not very interesting, are they? I mean, what could you say instead of bad? Something more interesting word. Awful, yeah, that's better than, yeah. Dreadful, atrocious, yeah. Horrendous, yeah, things like that. But the trick too with the speaking is it's got to sound natural. If you want a 7, you want to sound natural and flexible. So you don't have to throw in these very weird, unnatural words. That won't help you. So some people are asking about idioms for the vocab. Be careful with your idioms because some people learn like maybe 5 idioms and they just try to push them into their speaking wherever they can. That doesn't sound natural. So if you can naturally use some idioms like walk the talk or like, I don't know, I'm over the moon or something like that, but it sounds very natural, then please use them. But if you try to just force in a few, it's not really going to help you because the examiner can tell that it's not your natural speech. So someone asked, how many idioms do you need for a band 9? It's not about that. Yeah, a band 9 means that your English is expert level. Yeah, so it's not just about idioms. It costs an arm and a leg. Yeah, if you were talking about something naturally and it was really expensive, you might say, oh, it costs an arm and a leg. Yeah, that would be fine. Exactly. It's someone's saying you have to speak Royal English. Actually, no, it's not about that. It's not about speaking British English like the Queen. It's an international English test. It just has to sound natural and flexible and correct. I mean, depending on how high a score you need. So next one, we have to think about the grammar. You do have to think about your grammar. So if you want a 7, should be about 70 to 75% correct. If you want an 8, about 80 to 85% correct. Yeah, but it's not just about correct. It's also about this range. Yes, because I can say, I like Singapore, it is hot. Those 2 sentences are correct. Complex though? No. So if I can say, although I love Singapore, it tends to be hot. Oh, already that's a much better sentence. Yeah, so try to use things like although, however, whereas, while, if. This makes your sentences more complex. Yeah. So that's the next one, your grammar. And then finally, someone was saying about mentioning pronunciation. Okay, so this is not accent. Everybody has their accent. Like I have my weird accent, don't I? Do you know where I'm from? Any guesses? You try and guess where I'm from. So I'm not from England. Yes, I was born in Australia, but I've lived in Asia for almost 30 years. So I have a funny accent, right? That's my accent. So it's not about your accent. It's about how clearly you speak. G'day, Veronica. Throw another shrimp on the Barbie. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, so it's about how clearly you speak. Yeah, so someone mentioned stress. Yeah, putting the stress on the right words. Also, not rushing. The biggest tip is when people are nervous, they blah, 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 don't they? Try not to do that. Speak clearly and at a good pace, but don't rush. Yeah, and then if you want a higher score for pronunciation, you do need to use stress and intonation correctly. And a good way to work on that is to listen to lots of native speakers of English and the way that they use their stress and intonation. Yeah. Okay, so why are we going on about this? Because this is how they mark you. So they mark each one of these out of 9. So to get your 7, you have to have 7 for your fluency and coherence, 7 for your vocab, 7 for your grammar, 7 for your pron. Then you'll get a 7. Yeah, so as soon as one comes down to a 6, like maybe too fast and not very clear. So if you get 7, 7, 7, 6, that's a 6.5. Okay, so it's a numbers game. So we have to keep thinking of these four things all the time when we speak. All right, so let's go into each part of the speaking test. So part 1 is all about you. So the examiner is going to ask you about 12 questions actually, and all about you. Okay, for each question, we suggest that you say at least maybe 3 ideas. Yeah, you don't have to talk and talk and talk for a minute, but you need to expand. How? Use the B word, because, yeah, and give examples and details. So it could be a topic like this, but you can't see them, right? You can only hear what the examiner says. Let's talk about your favorite food. What is your favorite food? So if I said, I like sushi, is that enough? Is that long enough? No, right? I need to expand. So I could say why I like sushi, what kinds of sushi I like, that kind of thing. Now be careful with the grammar because they're also checking your grammar. So have you ever made it yourself? See that question? If I say, yes, I make it myself, is that okay? It's not okay, right? Because that's not correct grammar. You'd have to say, yes, I have tried to make it myself using the correct tense. Yeah, so they are always trying to check your grammar. Okay, so part 1 will be about you, probably about 12 questions. All right, part 2 is the weird part of the test. Now I'll ask you, so part 2, we break it down. So there's 1 minute. What's the 1 minute for? 1 minute to do what? 1 minute you have to prepare, that's right. And then you have 2 minutes to do what? 2 minutes to talk. Now we don't usually talk for 2 minutes unless you're hosting a webinar. So this is something you really have to practice. But the good news is we all have a phone, so you can just practice into your phone and then record it and listen to yourself and see what you do. So the trick is that, okay, when you get your topic, you are given a topic, you are given paper and a pencil. The topic always looks like this. How many things do they tell you to talk about? You should say, how many points? 4, yes, there's always one down here, okay? So there are always 4 points. So you can't write a script, so just make some notes under each point that you can refer to. Also, always check the grammar, the tense. Describe a school you went to when you were a child. So what grammar do we have to use here? Past, that's right. Yeah, so be careful, a lot of people forget. Sometimes they're not in the past. Sometimes it's like talk about your favorite restaurant. Yeah, but here we have 4, where it was, what you liked and didn't like, which teachers you remember, why you remember. You don't have to cover all of these. This is just to help you stay logical. Remember, it's important to be logical. So these are just to help you. If you don't finish all of them, doesn't matter. But most people, you don't have to go in order. These are just to help you. Yeah, so it's just very important to stay logical. Most people, though, they finish everything and it's only 1 minute. But you have to keep talking until the examiner says, thank you. That's your job. And it's 2 minutes. So what can you do if you finish all of them? You can go back to one of the points and say some more. So you could say, which teachers? Oh, let me tell you a bit more about another teacher that I remember. And then just talk more about that. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you can, if you really can't say anything about this school, anything more, start again, talk about another school. That's also fine as well. Just keep talking. Can you use the present perfect? But this is finished, right? This is past. So you wouldn't really use the present perfect. It's not affecting, unless it's affecting the present. Yeah. Can you glance at the task card for computer-based? Okay, so if you're doing your speaking test on the computer, they will share the card with you and you can see it on the computer. You can see it for the whole time that you're talking. So don't worry, you'll see it there. Yeah. If you can't hear the answer in part 1, okay, in part 1, if you don't understand the question, the examiner will repeat it 1 time because the questions are simpler. In part 3, they can repeat it a few times. Yeah. So let's move on now. We'll talk about part 3. So part 1 and part 2, who were you talking about? Oh, past perfect tense. You can use past perfect if you were talking past before past. Yeah, that would be great if you can use it correctly, for sure. Yes, part 1 and 2, we talk about ourselves. What about part 3? Is it about you? No, it's general. So be careful. If you answer and you say, well, I do this and my family, we do this, the examiner will say, but what about in general? Part 3, you have to talk about your country, society, the world. Okay, now my tip for this is instead of saying I, say people. Oh, instead, so they ask you something. So you want to say I do this, but don't say that. Say people. Then it makes it general. Okay, so let's have a look at the kinds of questions. So part 3, is it connected to another part of the test? It is, right? It's connected to part 2. So part 2, it was talk about the school you went to. So part 3 is going to be about schools in general. And so here are some of the typical questions. Let's talk about schools. What kinds of schools are there in your country? So if I'm asking you, I'm actually asking you guys now, what kinds of schools are there in your country? Can you type in the chat? Tell me. I mean, I know in Australia where I went to school, there are like government schools, there are private schools, yeah, international schools in Australia. I don't think we really have. We must, I'm not sure. I don't think there are international schools. Maybe there are. Yeah, so that's a great answer, Bruce. Public, private, international. Exactly. Homeschooling as well. Exactly. Perfect. Okay. So, and then you could expand by saying a bit more about which, okay, so here that this will be the second question, but you can't see the questions. So just remember, it's the same thing in part 3. We want to give reasons and examples. So say why and give examples. Expand your answer. Yeah, great. So you're all giving very good like lists here. That's great. Fantastic. Yeah, and so the questions in part 3 can become, there'll probably be about 8 questions in part 3, and they can become quite abstract. And that means you're doing well. If you think the questions become more challenging, that's a good sign. The examiner is pushing you. So someone was saying, what if I don't understand? In part 3, it's fine to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean. Could you clarify? Oh, and that's very nice English. It's fine to do that. Yeah, so for example, if we come down here, this could be the second topic. Let's talk about education policies. Wow. How will education change in the future? Okay, so this is like more abstract. You have to use your imagination. So, you know, maybe a lot of education will be conducted from home. A lot of it will be virtual. Perhaps AI will be much more involved. Okay, so the thing about part 3 is these are not things you talk about with your friends usually. I mean, some people might. So you need to practice talking about these more abstract topics. And this is why it's also good to start following the news. So that gives you ideas. Yeah. So, oh, Rovi put web-based learning, different kinds of technology. Exactly. That's fantastic. Are these real IELTS tests? This is just an example, but these are from past ones. They're not the current questions. No. I mean, if you want to go on Google, of course, you can find all the questions that are currently being used, but try not to memorize answers. If you want to practice with those questions, it's fine. But because you don't know which topic you'll get, right? But just if you want to practice, it's good, but don't try to memorize answers. It's too stressful and it sounds fake. Can you use you for giving example? You can choose. I wouldn't do that because it becomes more like personal. So my advice really is to say people, most people. Yeah, then it sounds general. Is it okay to use interjection? I'm not sure what you mean. Can you give me an example? Are you given time to prepare? No, in part 3, it's a discussion. It's supposed to just flow. So that's why we need to practice in part 3. And part 3 is the most important part of the test, actually, because it is a bit more challenging and it's where the examiner will decide your band score. By the time you leave, they will have decided what you are. So let's watch this boy, Ashish. He's from Nepal. Let's watch him do a bit of part 3. And so you can see some of the questions and his answers. Okay, we won't watch the whole thing. I just want to give you a taste. Interjection like, wow, gee. Yeah, you can say that if it's natural. Yeah, if you want to say that. If you want to say something in part 3, you don't understand the question. You can be like, wow, I've never thought about that before. That's a bit strange. Okay, well, maybe you can do that to give yourself a bit of time, but don't say it for every question because that will become weird. Yeah, but of course you can do that. Wow, without a doubt. Yeah, you could say that, definitely. That's an interesting question. That's a tricky question. You can say that for sure, but not for every question. Okay, so let's watch a bit of Ashish.
Let's talk about what you do.
Oh, okay, this is part 1. Let's watch him in part 3.
I don't think so. So do you really think that famous people in the...
Okay.
And they used to... I could see some big difference between the two. Back then, there wasn't
maybe it's part 1.
That was tough. Just noodles. More general questions.
Here we go.
Well-known person you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider first of all famous people in your country. What kind of people become famous nowadays?
These days in my country, people who become famous are politicians, I should say, because since the time we've entered into democracy, they've come into a lot of media attention. and they've because of their the manner the way they've been doing things for the betterment of the country, they've come into a lot of attention. And also with the improving media in my country, the stars over there, movie stars, have come into great attention.
Why do you think politicians and movie stars are famous and popular throughout the world?
Movie stars and singers undoubtedly are famous all over the world because of what they do. They entertain people and the way they do things. And politicians, I think, gain attention tend to gain attention on their take over the country, of what they're doing for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of the country, and what steps they are taking to do much better, or how they're going about it.
How would you compare the famous people today with the famous people of the past?
Big difference between the two. Back then, there wasn't so much of media attention, I could say so. As far as I know, famous people used to be role models, and they used to be good role models. But these days, famous people are role models, yet for many of them, students as well as adults. But can we call them all good models? I don't think so.
So do you really think that famous people in the past behaved better, or is it just that we don't know what they did in private life?
It's probably a bit of both. They behaved a lot better, because since we've become more advanced these days, we can do what we feel like. These days, most celebrities and famous people take things for granted and do what they like.
What kinds of people do you think will be famous in the future?
Continuing to be movie stars and singers, and some people who really make changes to the world. I could say so. Other than that,
do you imagine that in the future maybe people who are more worthy of fame will become famous, like scientists and writers?
Up till some extent, yes, because if they are really covered, I mean they really put themselves out to the world, then yes, they could get famous. But I would still say not as much as celebrities.
Okay, let's go on and talk about celebrity culture. For example, how are famous people used in advertising?
Famous people are used in advertising these days for a lot. We can see football stars, almost all the sports stars are into advertising, including the movie stars and singers as well.
Okay, so I'm not going to keep going, but you notice that they moved into the next topic. Let's talk about celebrity culture. So it's a bit more of a challenging topic, and they asked about advertising. So I see lots of interesting comments in the chat. Let's talk about why he's a 7.5. So some people will say, but some people I saw said, oh, he has ums. It's not about no ums, okay? It's about how fluent the person is and how good their ideas are and how logical. Can you follow what they're saying?
Let's talk.
So it's not like you can't say any ums at all. It's not about that. You can't. The thing about IELTS is you can't do it like, oh, he had 3 ums, therefore he can't get an 8. It doesn't work like that. You have to think about the whole thing. And so someone was asking about idioms. So this guy didn't really use a lot of idioms, and he didn't see there's an because sometimes it depends why we say If we're thinking of an idea, it's kind of okay. But if you're trying to hunt for a basic word using then it's not so okay, you see. So it depends. That's the thing. Let's have a look at why he's 7.5. 7.5 means that, okay, but Michelle is saying it's nice to know you say a lot of ums. Try not to say too many, because if you have a lot of ums and it's very noticeable, it will pull it down. Yeah, so, and a lot of this, particularly in part 3, is practice, getting comfortable talking about these abstract ideas. Okay, so 7.5 means some of the things he did are 8, very good, and some are 7, good. Then he gets a mixture, right? So he's 7.5. So what did you think about his fluency and coherence? Could he keep talking? Was he able to answer all the questions with a relevant kind of answer? Yes, he could. So he reaches an 8 here. He's fluent and he's very natural and comfortable. He's not pausing and he's not stopping. Yeah, and if he thinks of an idea, if he kind of pauses, it's to think of his ideas. And he has good linking words. Yeah, I am both, basically, as well, every now and then. Yeah, things like that. Now, what about his vocab? Would we say it was very good, or is it more good? So his vocab here, yes, he's a 7. So he tended to repeat. He had some nice phrases, but he tended to repeat them. And some of them weren't correct. Yeah, so he doesn't actually make it up to the 8 for the vocab. His grammar, however, was very good, like very few mistakes. Yeah, most of the sentences did not have mistakes, and he had lots of different structures. And let's think about his pron. Did he rush? Was he blah, 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 blah? No, right? He wasn't. And was he quite clear the way he talked? Did he emphasize things well? He did. So he reaches the 8 here. Just a few problems. So instead of both, he doesn't say vote, yeah, and vent instead of went. Yeah, so, but they're just tiny things. So he's a 7.5. Someone's asking if the test is recorded. It's always recorded. This is in case you want to challenge the mark, and also if they need to remark for whatever reason. So it's always recorded. Yeah, okay. So just some overall tips with the speaking, or we do need to keep moving because we've got 3 more tests to talk about. So we need, with the speaking, please practice. So find the part 3 questions and practice answering them with reasons and examples. But more than that, just try to make sure you're speaking lots in English so you're comfortable. Yeah, we don't want to rush. So he had a good pace, not blah, blah, blah. In that 1 minute for part 2, please write down some notes. You can't write a script, but put some notes to help you. Check the grammar. Is it past tense? Yeah, so instead of pausing like this, try to talk what's going on in your head. So, oh, I haven't really thought about that before. Well, let me see. I think it could be. So talk it out. Yeah, and if you want a high mark for prawn, you've got to use stress and intonation. Your voice has to emphasize the important words. Can you use slang? You can use slang if you want to in the speaking test. The tone, I always think, but you don't want to use, if you're from this region, you don't want to use Singlish or Manglish. You know, you need to use English. Yeah, and try not to slip into your own language. Yes, and if you make a mistake and you know, don't worry, it's not about one mistake. Yeah, but if you realize straight away, you can correct yourself. That's also a good thing to do. So we always want to expand reasons and examples. Sometimes you can argue with yourself in part 3. You can be like, well, it could be this. Or on the other hand, it could be that. There's another side to it. So it's good to argue with yourself sometimes. So please practice, but don't memorize because it will sound very fake. A lot of people in part 3, you tend to say, I think, I think, I think. Try to say that in different ways. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you ask me, like my take on this is, I suppose, yeah, I reckon, all of that's very good. Okay, the topics in part 3. So some of the common topics for speaking part 3 are things like education, environment, travel, as it says, transport, communication, what else? Entertainment, health, oh, we've got health there, fitness, recreation, yeah, all those common things that are often in the news. Yeah, books sometimes, sports. Yeah, so if you're following the news and you just have ideas about things that are happening in the world, you'll be okay. All right, so why are paper-based so much longer? Because, I don't know, it's just the way they have to coordinate all the hard copy papers and scan them and mark them, and it just takes longer. Yeah. Okay, so that's speaking tests. All right. I don't know. Did we have a poll about that or not? Oh, okay. Yeah, this is just a little quick review to see what you remember. Yeah, so in the speaking test, you have to speak with a British or American accent. If you run out of things to say in part 2, you just stop. In part 3, you should talk about your personal experience. Some tricks. Just going to let this run a little bit longer. Will they give you feedback? Yeah, unfortunately, the examiner will tell you nothing. You can't know. If you can ask the examiner, how did I do? But the examiner won't tell you. They'll just say, you'll find out in 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah, can you mix American and British English? And yeah, you can if you want to, but it's better to speak in your natural accent that's clear. But yeah, I mean, Australian is kind of a mixture of British and American, isn't it, in a way, sort of. All right, so yes, you don't have to use British or American. It just needs to be clear and correct stress and intonation. So in part 2, do not stop until the examiner says, thank you. Yeah, you must keep talking. Otherwise, it will affect your score. In part 3, you should not talk about your personal experience. Part 3 is general. Okay, so please say people. People do this, not I. Yeah. Okay, good. Now we need to move on. We're already running behind. Okay, we're going to talk next about everybody's favorite test, the writing. Now, we will see that writing and speaking have a lot in common, actually. So just to remind me, can you tell me what kind of news should you follow? Try to follow international and local, yeah? If you follow like BBC, Voice of America, if you prefer, The Guardian, all those are good. This webinar is 2 hours. And it usually goes over like almost 2.5. It's a long webinar. All right, so yeah, so tell me, how many tasks do you have in the writing? 2, that's right. So whether you're doing academic or general, we have 2. And how long is the test? It's an hour, yeah? So writing is the last one that we do. Okay, so if you're doing academic, you're going to have to describe something in words, summarize a chart, a graph, a table, and your second task is an essay. If you're doing general, first task is a letter, second task is an essay. Okay, so let's think about the scoring again. This is really similar to the speaking. 2 of them are the same. Which 2 are the same? The vocab, lexical resource, and the grammar, exactly. So these 2 are exactly the same. Now these ones are a bit different. Task achievement is, did you answer the questions? But similarly to speaking, did you use good linking words? Then we have cohesion and coherence. Oh, sorry, this comes here, not here. Task achievement, did you answer the question? Did you expand? Did you give good reasons? Cohesion and coherence. So this word coherence again, logical, linking words, and please use paragraphs in your writing, separate paragraphs, very important. Then we have the vocab, as we mentioned before, more unusual words, but it also includes your spelling. Is there a spell check on the computer delivered? No. Yeah, so our spelling that matters here. And then the grammar. Again, it's the complex sentences, being correct, also punctuation now, full stops, capital letters, all of that matters. So again, they mark out of 9. So to get your 7, you need 7 answering the question, 7 structure and paragraphs, linking words, 7 vocab, 7 grammar. Okay, so we have to think about all these 4 things again. All right, so we're going to talk about academic task 1 first. So if you're doing general, this will take me about maybe 10 minutes. So go grab a drink and come back. Or you can sit through it if you want, but if you want to go have a drink and a snack, come back in about 10 minutes. Do we have to include the title on top of your essay? No, okay, but I'm going to get into that, but no need for a title. All right. Can I be slower? I'm sorry, I can't really be slower because we have so much to cover. Is IELTS in IDP scored the same as British Council? IELTS is scored the same all over the world. It doesn't matter which organization you do it for. Okay, so let's talk about academic task 1. So what are you doing again, you academic folks, for your task 1? You remember, can you remind me? Chart. Okay, looking at a chart. No, the letter is general. We're talking about academic task 1. Diagram, summarize. Okay, yes, you're on track. Now, how many words and how long do you have? 150 words and how long? 20 minutes. Good. Okay, so we are taking something visual and we have to describe it in words. Yeah, that's our job for academic. So here's an example. Now, sometimes you just have one thing. Sometimes you have 2 things to describe. It doesn't matter. You just use the same technique. Now, remember, we only have 20 minutes, so we want to do it fast. We also want to do it well. Task 1 is not worth as much as task 2, so don't get stuck on your task 1. Must do it within 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to try to show you what I think is a quicker way to do it. So first job is to read what we're dealing with. The charts show the number of Japanese tourists traveling abroad between 1985 and 1995 and Australia's share of Japanese tourist market. Okay, so we're dealing with Japanese tourists going to Australia. I always look at the time. So is this the past or the future? 85 to 95. What's that? You can start with task 2 first. Yep, up to you. You can do task 2 first, task 1 first, up to you. Paper-based or computer delivered. Past, yes, we're talking about the past, so be careful. Now, this is always our job. We have to summarize the information. We have to pull out the main features and compare. That's always our job for task 1, no matter what we're given. Okay, so now we have to spend a couple of minutes looking at this and understanding the main trends that we're going to summarize. So here we've got Japanese tourists. Now, if it's a graph, there are a few things that I always do. I always look at the vertical axis, number in millions. So be careful, it's not 246, it's 2 million, right? Then this is year. Okay, so we have to look for the main trends. So my first question is always, overall, is it up or overall, is it down? You tell me, is it going up overall or going down? It's increasing, yeah, some changes, but overall increasing. Now we have to look at the important points. We always look at the start. Where is it? How many tourists in 85? Now, if you're not exactly sure, you can just say approximately is fine. Yeah, approximately 5 million. And at the end, then we look at the end. How many at the end? Approximately 16 million, exactly. Now we have to look for anything that stands out. Oh, no, we also have to look for the peak. Where is the highest point? Which year is the peak here? Yes, so it's also it's the end for this one. Okay, now when there's a trend that's the same, we don't mention every single year, no need. We only need to mention where it changes. So which year do we need to talk about where it changed? Yeah, here, right? And maybe here because it's kind of like a plateau, but yeah, definitely here. Okay, so we're going to have to talk about what happened here. It dropped back. Yeah, then it leveled off. Okay, good. So that's what we're going to highlight for this one. Now we're looking at Australia's share. So how many of the tourists that went overseas went to Australia? Now look at the vertical. Careful, it's not millions now. Now it is percent. Okay, now is overall up or overall down? Overall up or up? Yeah, again up. So at the start, very low, right? 2%. What about at the end? Where are we at? What number? Where are we at the end? 6, about 6%. Yeah, that's right. Now, where is the peak? Which year is the highest point? Is it 1990? I don't think so. 1994 is the highest point. That's right. So it's just over 6%, isn't it? So here's the peak is different. So we need to highlight that. Now, what other year do we want to point out? This one, right, where it changed. Yeah, 89 to 90. So they're all the things that we're going to highlight when we talk about it. So always spend a minute or so picking out the important points to talk about. Now we need to start writing because we only have 20 minutes. So the 3 rules of writing, we have, of course, have an introduction. We need to pull out all the main features and describe with lots of data so the examiner could draw it. We must also have this overview. Okay, so how to do the introduction? The fastest way is to literally paraphrase. So just change the words. So the chart, the graph shows, hang on. The charts show, so here the chart and graph compare instead of show, the number of Japanese tourists, yeah, who spent their holidays overseas, traveling abroad. So we literally just change the words. That can be the introduction, the start of the introduction. Okay. All right, so next, we need to pull out all the important features, the important things. Now, when you have 2, the easiest way to do it is just talk about one graph and then talk about the other graph. It gets very confusing when you try to compare across, okay? You'll get in a mess. So just talk about one and then talk about the other. So first, let's talk about this one. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. In 1985, only about 5 million. See, that's what we pulled out, didn't we? Traveled abroad, after which the number increased steadily. By 1990, the figure had more than doubled to 11 million. Apart from a slight drop the following year to just over 10 million, remember that was the important thing we picked out, the upward trend continued until the end of the period when numbers reached over 15 million. Okay, so we talked about all the important things. Now, notice that we said what it went to. So you can't just say it increased steadily. You have to say from what to what. So the examiner could kind of draw it. Yeah. Now, the other two more important things, we could just say it increased, it decreased, but that's not very interesting in terms of the vocab. So notice the vocab that we use: increase steadily, a slight drop. Yeah. Yeah, so we try to use these words to describe. So either an adverb or an adjective to describe what kind of an increase. And then we have one more job. Do you remember the third job? We must compare. You must do this. Can you spot the comparing language? There are 2 comparing words at least here in this paragraph. It more than doubled. Yeah, that's comparing, but there's some other phrases as well. Apart from, yeah, apart from. So before it was this and then it was this. After which as well. Okay, good. So we've talked about this one. Now we have to talk about the other one. Okay, so while Australia was destination for under 2% of Japanese tourists in 1985 as a start, this percentage had risen to over 6% by 1994. Yeah, that's the peak, isn't it? The proportion grew consistently apart from a slight fall in 1990, that's that bit. After reaching its 1994 peak, the percentage declined marginally to 6%. See, we pulled out all the important information. Now, can you spot the interesting vocab to describe? Can you spot some of it? Okay, risen we didn't say, but here, grew consistently. That's nice. Slight fall, declined marginally, right? That makes it more interesting. And can you spot the comparing words? Can you spot the comparing words? Apart from again, we use, that's right. And there's one right at the start, while. Yeah, so you must include all these. And then we've got one more thing. Oh, we'll talk about in a minute. So you must remember to include the numbers. You can't just say it increased, it decreased. From what to what? So the examiner could draw it. If you forget to include the numbers, you get 5 for your task achievement. Now, don't forget the overview. So the overview is one more paragraph where, or it can be one sentence, which describes everything in general. So I'll read this to you. Overall, despite the relatively small proportion of Japanese tourists coming to Australia, the Japanese tourist market corresponded closely with the growth in Japanese tourism overseas generally, with a trebling of both in the 10-year period. Is there any hard data there? Any actual numbers? No, right? So that's what the overview has. The overview just describes everything generally with no numbers. It says trebling, but we don't know from what to what. And we don't know which 10-year period, which actual years. Okay, so you must have this overview sentence. And otherwise you will get band 5 for task achievement. So you must have that. Okay, so just to quickly recap. So for your task 1, we have to have the introduction. So we rewrite the topic. We have to describe everything with a lot of detail. And then we must have the overview. And when we're describing, we have to have lots of numbers and comparing language. Okay, so just to review, you've got to hit your 150. That's the minimum, but there's no maximum. But remember the time. We don't want to get stuck. Must have the overview. Pull out the most important information with lots of numbers. Remember to compare, apart from, after which, similarly, in comparison. The linking words are often these comparing words. And paragraphs. So in that one, usually in task 1, you have 4, maybe 3 paragraphs. Now, checking for mistakes, I'll talk a bit about that later. Yeah, so please remember to have numbers when you describe. So don't just say it rose, it fell. This will pull your score down. Now, we never say why. Okay, so you never say, well, I think a lot of people are going to Australia because they like barbecues and they want to have more barbecues. No, never do that. Just describe what you see. The overview can be at the end, or it can be straight after the introduction. If you prefer to put it at the top with the introduction, also very good. Up to you. But we don't have to describe everything, right? Like in that graph, you just describe where it changes. And you must have your overview. Okay, so there is a process in your notes on page 6 in your masterclass pack. Sometimes you don't get a graph or a chart. Sometimes you get something like a process where you have to describe step by step by step. It's exactly the same. You just describe what's there. And it's like a sequence. Okay, so it's actually, process is not that difficult. Just make sure you describe everything that you see there. Map, okay, map is quite rare. Map sometimes comes up. The secret with map is you'll usually have before and after. So you describe what has changed, which things have changed. You know, so are there more streets? Is there a park? But with a map, you must mention everything on the map. Yeah, but try to group it in terms of what's changed. But map doesn't come up that much. Okay, good. So that's your task 1 academic. So academic, you can have a little rest because I know that's a lot. And we'll talk about general task 1. But academic, please come back in about 10 minutes or maybe 7 minutes. We're going to talk about the essay. All right, so general task 1. Can you tell me what you're doing for your task 1? What are you doing? A letter. You have a much easier job than academic. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. You have 20 minutes and you have to write at least 150. Of course, you can write more, but careful with the time. Now, with the letter, it always looks like this. So it tells you how to start. So you just start like that. Don't need an address. So this one says, dear sir or madam, you just copy it. Okay, so then it's always divided like this. There have been some problems with public transport in your area. Write a letter to the manager of a public transport company. In your letter, describe the problems, explain how problems are affecting the public, suggest what changes could be made. It always looks like this. Now you have 3 jobs with the letter. The first job is to work out your tone. Okay, tone is important. You can get the tone here, dear sir or madam, and who you're writing to, letter to the manager. So what's your tone going to be? What's your tone? So I told you up here, I think semi-formal because you want it to sound modern. You know, like it Like when we write an email to someone you don't know at work, you don't want it to sound too formal. Yeah, polite is good. Polite, like official kind of thing. Yeah, that's right. So that's our tone. We don't know the person and we're saying dear sir or madam. So semi-formal. Semi-formal is kind of like formal. I just want you to be careful not to be old-fashioned. Yeah, because it's got to sound real. Okay, the big secret with the letter is that you would really send this letter in Canada or New Zealand or wherever. So it's got to sound real. Can you use contractions for semi-formal? No. Only use contractions. So contractions are like things like don't, isn't. Only use that for an informal letter if they ask you to write to a friend. Don't use them for kind of official letters. All right, so that's our first job, tone. Second job is purpose. Why are we writing the letter? The overall reason, the main reason. So you always get it from up here, this orange part. There have been some problems with public transport. Usually we say, you have to use do not, cannot. Yeah, in a semi-formal letter, yes, you do. There have been some problems with public transport in your area. I mean, if the letter is dear sir or madam, then you should, yes, then you should not use contractions because it's a clash of tone. Why is it semi-formal? Because I'm just saying semi-formal. Don't get hung up on it, okay? Because I don't want you to be too formal. A lot of people write their letter in a very funny, old-fashioned, overly formal way. Then you lose marks for your tone. It needs to be natural, okay? Now, let's get to the purpose. Your purpose you can usually say with to. Why are we writing? Why are we writing this letter? The overall purpose is what? To do what? To share some problems with public, to talk about some, or to bring up some problems with public transport. Yeah? Okay, good. That's the overall purpose, to raise a concern. Very nice. Yeah. So, okay, so that's the next thing. We must pull out this purpose because it has to be at the top of the letter. Third job, look at the bullet points carefully. So there are always 3 problems. Be careful with this, with the plural. We can't just talk about one problem. Explain how the problems are affecting the public. Suggest what changes could be made. So we have to do these 3 things. Now, someone was saying you have to use your imagination. Yes, in the letter, you have to use your imagination a bit, but it's got to sound real. Okay, so the problem should not be there are ghosts on the bus and I'm scared. I mean, that doesn't sound real. It sounds silly. Yeah, I mean, it's creative, but it's not real. So make it real, okay, like a real thing that you would really send. Okay, so as we just said, the 3 rules of writing the letter, the purpose needs to be near the top, must cover all the bullet points fully, keep the tone correct. So let's have a look at a model. So they said to start dear sir or madam, so we did. First paragraph, can you spot the purpose? Can you see it? I am writing to draw your attention to recent problems. Yeah, that's the purpose of writing. We start though with a bit of background about ourselves, not our name, but who you are. I am a resident of Newtown and I'm writing to draw your attention. Okay, so that's the first paragraph with the purpose. Next paragraph is the first bullet point, the problems. Can you see that we've used linking words to introduce the problems? Can you see them? First linking word, briefly. Second linking word is what? Furthermore. That's right. And see the problems. They sound real. Roadworks have led to long delays. New bus timetable has dramatically reduced frequency of buses. Okay, so 2 real sounding problems. Next paragraph, we have to talk about the effect on the public. Can you see a topic sentence which tells us what this paragraph is about? The effect of these actions becomes very obvious during peak hours. Yeah, so that's the effect. So there's a high level of public concern. Public transport users now find it takes 20 minutes, so that's one effect. Linking word to introduce the next effect. Shoppers who travel by bus not worth the trouble, leading to a drastic downturn. Now, in this paragraph, there is some nice vocabulary. Remember, we want to use some interesting vocab that also sounds natural. Can you pick the nice vocab? Yeah, drastic downturn is good, isn't it? Yeah, high level of public concern. This sounds nice too, right? Not worth the trouble. Yep, all those sound really good. Third bullet point are the suggestions. So here's one, may I suggest buses be rerouted? And the second suggestion has a linking word, recommend a return to the old weekend timetable. Your paragraph, you can indent or you can just do block paragraph and leave a blank line in between. That is usually clearer, actually. Then the last paragraph, we just point to the next step. I look forward to receiving your response to my suggestions. Don't forget to sign off. Dear Sir or Madam, yours faithfully. That's the same tone. And don't forget the name. So can you see the tone of this letter, how it is a bit more formal, but still sounds real, okay? Now, if you forget one of the bullet points that you forgot the suggestions, it's very bad news. You get a band 4 on your task achievement. It's good to leave one blank line between each paragraph, yeah. So keeping the same tone all the way through. Now this one here, you can have a look in your masterclass pack. This one got a band 6.5, so you can see why. It's quite well done, but there are just too many grammar mistakes. So you can have a look at it in your own time. We won't go through it now. Okay, so just some overall tips for general task 1. Please do what we just did. Look for the tone, the purpose, and really carefully read the bullets. Check for plurals in the bullets, like problems. The purpose needs to be in the first paragraph. You need usually 5 paragraphs in your letter. Last paragraph, we kind of look to the next step. Yeah, so keep the tone correct over the whole letter. Try not to copy the words in the topic. Try to use synonyms if you can. Just start the way they tell you. So dear sir or madam. If it's dear ... then you just make up a name. You don't need to put your address. And if you match the opening and the closing. Okay, so that's the letter. So we're not going to do the poll just because of it running out of time a bit. So let's move on and we're going to talk about the essay. Now, although task 1, yeah, it's important. Task 2, the essay is way more important. It's worth 66%. So how long should you be spending on it and how many minutes? 40 minutes. And how many words minimum? 250 words, that's right, minimum. Of course, you can write more, but 250 minimum. All right, so the topics are different for academic and general. Academic topics are a bit more abstract, but the method is the same. So we'll talk about it together, okay? So with the essay, there are kind of 3 main types that they'll give you. The topics are all different, but either they are asking you for your opinion, you have to discuss something, or sometimes there are a few different questions that you have to answer. So let's look at a few topics. Now, every essay, no matter what type, this is always your job. Okay, so we have to give reasons and examples. Yeah. So we have to give reasons and examples, always for the essay, giving reasons and examples. Okay, so when you get your essay, it looks like this. So usually it's divided into two parts, sort of like this. Okay, so this first part, the top, this is our topic, what we're talking about. Okay, so let's read that. Children who are brought up in families that do not have large amounts of money are better prepared to deal with the problems of adult life than children brought up by wealthy parents. That's what we're talking about. So what I usually do with this, in my mind, I try to say it in my own way so I understand. So what are they saying? So children who are not so rich, poorer kids, they actually, when they grow up, they can cope with life better than rich kids. So that's our topic. Now this part here is, these are our instructions. So this is what we have to do. To what extent do you agree or disagree? When we see this word extent, we need to say how much. So is it we mostly agree, we strongly agree, we partially agree, we partially disagree, we strongly disagree? Yeah. So so what do you think? What's your opinion? Do you mostly agree, partially agree? What's your, so the first thing when you get this opinion essay is you have to work out your position. So Veronica says she greatly agrees. Okay, great. What about other people? What do you think? Tell me in the chat. Do you mostly agree? Or do you partially agree? Or do you partially disagree? Partially agree, okay, totally agree, partially, okay, good. So you, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You just have to get your position. Why? Because you're going to have to think of reasons and examples for that. You can go over 250 words. There's no upper limit, but be careful with the time. Okay, so if you can write 300 words, that's fine, totally fine. All right, so that's our job. We have to think of reasons and examples why. So let's have a look at one of these in your masterclass pack. So this one got a band 8, which is a high score for academic writing. Yeah, so I'll just go through it briefly with you to show you why it's good. So a lot of the reason why it's good is it has very clear structure and good reasons and examples. So here you see the person has their position. I do agree that people growing up in poor families are better prepared to deal with the problems of adult life. Now, there's a little problem with this introduction, is that it copied the topic too closely. Yeah, it would be better to, remember, paraphrase. So don't copy the topic, change the words, change the vocabulary. But it's good because the person put their position. So here's one reason: the children of poor parents are prematurely exposed to problems of adult life, learning to survive. Yeah. These children begin to see the realities of life. So that's one reason why they agree. So here's another reason: they're taught necessary skills for survival. They often work on the weekends. So here's an example, e.g. So e.g. is not ideal though. We want to really write it out fully, for example. But here's an example. Remember, we have to have reasons and examples. All right, here's a better example of the example. A good example is the many children who accompany their parents to sell produce at the market. They are making a direct contribution to their families in terms of labor or income. See, that's a very nice example. The example should just support your reason. So that's a nice example that that person is using to illustrate their reason. And here's another reason. Children of families are highly motivated. They set high goals. So 3 very good reasons why this person agrees. Okay, then this person is considering the other side. There are some problems that children encounter, robbed of their childhood. Yeah, so it is, I think it makes a stronger essay if you at least consider the other side. One reason. You don't have to, but I think it makes it more stronger. And then to sum up, you just kind of summarize the main points again in the conclusion. But partly why this essay gets an 8 is its very clear structure. Each paragraph is very clear, very good reasons and examples. It has really good vocab and grammar as well. Yeah, okay, so that's an example of a band 8. Okay, so sometimes it's not agree or disagree. Sometimes it's like this. Some people believe the increasing popularity of shopping as a leisure activity is a positive trend. Others believe this is harmful to individuals. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. Okay, again, our job is the same. Give reasons and examples. Now this one, here's our instructions. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. How many things do we have to do in this essay? 3, that's right. We have to talk about both the views. So in this type of essay, view 1 is always some. Some people think increasing popularity of shopping as a leisure activity is positive. So shopping as leisure is great. That's view 1. View 2 is always others. Others believe it's harmful. Shopping as a leisure activity is bad. Okay, so first you have to argue that view one, that shopping as a leisure activity is good, then that it's bad, and then you have to give your opinion, what you think. Okay, and so then this is another type of essay, also about shopping, but different questions. Shopping is becoming more and more popular as a leisure activity. However, some people feel this has both positive and negative effects. Why is shopping so popular? What effects does its increase in popularity have on individuals and society? So how many things do we have to do in this essay? Do you think? This is a bit of a trick. How many things do we have to do? 4. Not really, maybe 4. 3. Yeah, I think 3. Why is it popular? What effects does its increase have on individuals and on society? That's what we have to talk about in this one. So let's have a look at another one that got band 8. So that first one we looked at about the children, that's an academic essay. This one is general, but this one also got band 8. Why? Because again, it really answers the questions. It has good vocab and grammar. Okay, the introduction is a bit long, I think. Ideally in IELTS, your paragraph should be about 4 to 6 lines. Yeah, but still this got an 8. So the introduction is paraphrasing the topic. Shopping is very popular. Okay. Then they have to talk about the reasons. So that person talks about the reasons here. This is due to the fact, yeah? So it would have been better to make this a separate paragraph. So the reasons are here. So then here they're talking about the effect on the individual. It nourishes self-esteem. An individual may find the social contact most gratifying. Yeah, so that's one reason, the effect on individuals. Effect on society is here. And then another effect on society here. And then the conclusion. This conclusion is actually a bit weak because the person is giving their opinion and they weren't asked for their opinion, were they? It's just, yeah, so it would be better to just summarize all the points in the last paragraph. But you can have a look at this in your masterclass pack. It is a very strong essay. We've got a band 8. Okay, so just to quickly go through some tips for the essay. The essay is worth 66%. Yeah, this essay didn't ask you for your opinion, did it? It asked you to talk about why shopping is so popular and the effect on individuals and society. It didn't say, do you agree or disagree? So if it doesn't ask you for your opinion, do not give your opinion. Just follow the instructions. That's a really good question though. The secret to IELTS, all the tests, follow the instructions. Yeah. Okay, so task 2 is worth a lot more, 66%. So please spend more time on it. Make sure you analyze the question and answer it properly. Okay, so you need to you need to have paragraphs. So usually 4 or 5 paragraphs, just as long as it's very clear what each paragraph is about. Yes, so you need again to use linking words to make it flow in the essay. Now, if you run out of time, do not put bullet points or notes. This is for any of the writing. You must write in full sentences or you will lose marks. Yeah. So how to differentiate if it's your opinion? If you say, in my opinion, or I think, yeah, then it's your opinion. It's, yeah. Yeah, so checking. Okay, so it's really good to leave 2 minutes or so to go through and check your spelling and check your grammar. How do you check your grammar? So maybe you have very good grammar, then don't worry about this. But if your grammar is not good, write an essay, show it to someone who has very good grammar. Get them to mark your mistakes. You will see that you tend to make the same mistakes, and you can train yourself to look for those mistakes that you tend to make and find them. All right, so we spend a lot of time on the writing and speaking because those ones do, I mean, most people are really worried about those and they do take a long time to talk about. So we're going to change gear. Now, if you're worried about the writing, we have a separate webinar where we talk all about the writing in a lot more depth. So you can find out about that on your IDP website in your country. All right, so let's change gear. We saw that writing and speaking are quite similar. We'll see that listening and reading are also quite similar. Listening and reading are mean tests. There are a lot of tricks and traps. Okay, the answer is either right or wrong, and they're trying to trick you. So you have to be really focused. Listening is the first test that we do. There's no, okay, task 2 in writing, the number of paragraphs, there's no rule. It just has to be clear what each paragraph is about. And a paragraph needs to be about 4 lines. 2 lines is too short for a paragraph. But a paragraph shouldn't be too long either, maybe about 6 lines long. Okay, so let's get into the listening. So listening is the shortest test apart from speaking. It's only 30 minutes. It has 4 sections and it gets harder. Part 1 and part 2 are kind of okay. They're about social things. Part 3 and part 4 are academic and it gets much harder. So we want to get most of our points in the first half. The thing that's annoying about the listening is we only hear it once. Yeah. So if you're doing paper-based, you answer on the question sheet, and you have 10 minutes to copy your answers over at the end. If you're doing computer delivered, you just type your answers as you listen. Okay, so it's a bit different. All right, so this is an example. So we're going to try just a little bit. This is from part 1 of a speaking test, just to give you a try. Now, when you do it, you should always predict. They always give you some time at the start to look ahead at the questions and predict and guess. So we're listening, so we know what we're listening for. The thing about the listening is it's all about synonyms, words that mean the same thing. So is the word that they said the same as the word that you need in your question? We're always listening for synonyms. Now remember, we follow instructions, so complete the form. 1 word and or a number. Can I write 2 words? Yeah, in the listening, if you do your test with IDP, you have your own headset. No, that's right, not 2 words, 1 word and 1 number. But a phone number is considered 1 number, okay? So now we have to quickly look through and predict. So Theatre Royal Plymouth, date, Saturday, so that's going to be some kind of date, right? Time, okay. 3 adults, 1 child, seats in the, so this is a theatre, so it's some part of the theatre. Yeah, so we can kind of guess what the different parts of the theatre are. Seat, row, and number. So row should be what? A letter, right? And number should be a number. Then total payment, card details. So type, maybe it's Visa. It's going to be the number. This is going to be name. Put on the mailing list. So always look at the grammar. Put on the mailing list, book something. Okay, so let's have a try. As you listen, can you type the answers in the chat as we go through? Okay, this is just to give you a little try. You ready?
Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
This is in your masterclass pack too, these questions.
Hello, Theatre Royal Plymouth?
Oh, hello. I'd like to make a booking, please.
Yes. What is it you want to see?
The Imposter.
Right. And which day did you want to come?
Friday the 25th.
Just a moment and I'll check availability on the computer. Oh, sorry, we're fully booked for that performance.
Oh dear. What about the following day then?
The 26th? Yes, that's okay. We've got 2 performances on that day, one at 3:30 and one at 7. Which would you prefer?
Oh, the later one, please.
Mm-hmm. How many people?
Well, there are 4 of us.
Are there any concessions? Any children?
Oh, I'm not sure. My daughters are 15 and 12. Do they get concessions?
Only the 12-year-old, I'm afraid. So that's 1 child and 3 adults. Any idea where you'd like to sit? Stalls or circle? Tickets for the stalls are a bit more expensive. £12 for adults and £8.50 for children. The circle costs £10.50 and £6.50.
Do you get a good view from the circle?
Oh, yes. And in fact, we've got some seats left at the front, if you'd like those.
Right. We'll go for those then.
Right, that's seats A21 to 24 then. They're very good seats.
That sounds fine.
So let's see, that comes to £38 altogether for the tickets. How do you want to collect them? Shall I put them in the post? They'd be sent today by first-class mail, and there'd be an additional charge of £1 to cover postage and administration. Or do you want to get them from the box office yourself?
Oh, yes. Could you send them, please?
No problem. That'll be £39 altogether.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10.
We're just going up to 8 though. Okay. So they'll give you some time. They'll tell you what to look at next. I'll just move this forward a bit.
Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Could I just take your card details? What kind of card is it? Visa? Switch?
MasterCard.
Okay. And the number?
It's 3290 5876 4401 2899.
2899. Okay. And the name on the card, please?
It's Mr. J. Whitten. WHITTON.
N for never or M for mother?
N for never.
Thank you. And now I've nearly finished, but I just need your address and postcode.
Yes, it's 42 South Street,
Okay. Is that Plymouth?
London.
And the postcode?
It's SW2 5GE.
That's fine then. The ticket should be with you tomorrow. Is there anything else I can do for you?
Yes, I was wondering if I could get regular information about what's on.
Certainly. I can just add your name to our mailing list. Would that be okay?
That would be very good. Yes, please. Oh, and there is something else, sorry. One of our group is hard of hearing, and I've heard that you can supply special headphones.
That's right. As long as you tell us in advance, we can always do that. I'll book those for you now, and you can just collect them from the box office before the show.
Thanks very much for your help.
No problem. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, good. I saw some good answers.
That is the end of section 1.
So you see section 1 of the test
Now we shall be
is all about giving information. So they're really trying to test if you can cope with, handling bookings and sharing information in English. So yeah, so it's not really that difficult, part 1, but it's a matter of listening carefully. So I'm going to put the answers up and you can tell me if there are any that you don't agree with. So notice that it was Whitten. Yeah, and you don't have to write this other part. So be careful. Remember, you can only write one word and a number. So if you did write Mr. J, you would get that wrong because you can only write one word. Yeah, so it's just Whitten. Yeah, that's right. And headphones has an S. It's always plural. So we always have to listen carefully for the S sound. Yeah, any ones that you want to, so this is a bit tricky, the circle. And then the row, it was a bit unclear on the recording, but they said A. Will only 7 be not correct? Times 7. Yeah, 7 would be okay, I think. They're quite flexible with times. So if you just wrote 7, I think that would be all right as well. Can you just write 26? Saturday 20. Yeah, they would. Yeah, see, that's optional. Yeah, I think they would. With dates, they're quite flexible. MasterCard. Okay, so with MasterCard, it does strictly have a capital letter, but they don't mark punctuation. So if you put a lowercase, you would still get the mark. Okay. You don't need to include the. So remember that this is, when it's in brackets, it's optional. So you don't have to have the. See, it's in brackets. Yeah, and you can only have one word, but yeah, that would be all right. Okay, good. So that was just a taste of the listening. That's the easiest part of the listening. It gets a lot harder later. What if you answered circles instead of circle? Unfortunately, that would be wrong because it's called the circle and they didn't say circles. So you have to train yourself to listen for the plurals. Yeah. You can put 26 without TH. I think that would be fine. Yeah. Okay. So with the listening, you need to always keep moving. So they will say words from the next question to keep you moving. So as soon as you get an answer, you have to start looking at the next question. Yeah. And a lot of the listening is practice. So if you start doing like one, just like we did then, one section, there are 4 sections. Start with part 1. If you practice that every day, you will improve really quickly. Then you move to practicing part 2 on like that. Yeah. So listening for the keywords, predicting what you need, the information you need is very important with the listening. Thinking of the synonyms, what other words they might say. The questions always go in order. They never go backwards. So you just have to keep moving forward and always reading the instructions carefully. So only one word. They kind of guide you through. As they move to the next question, they might say like, and now, you know, they kind of guide you along. All right, so that's listening. I'm going to not do the poll just because we're running out of time. Let's think about the reading now. So the reading is similar to the listening. A lot of things are similar. The trick with the reading is 1 hour, 40 questions. It's a lot, and you have to do all the reading as well. So you're reading around more than 2,000 words. Reading is different for academic and general. So academic, you are reading things that you might read at university. So your papers, journal articles, that kind of thing. General, you're reading things that you might read in the English-speaking country. Could be like a timetable, could be a TV guide, could be an advertisement, but there's always one article as well. Yeah, so paper-based and computer-based usually use headphones, but it may depend on where you are, which country you're in. So the best thing to do is check with the country that you're in. Yeah, so with the reading, there's a lot of words to read. So you have to read and answer. So you're kind of racing against time. So you need to train yourself to be fast and accurate. The test gets harder. You want to try to get most of your points in the earlier part of the test. So we need some skills. We need some strategies to help us with the reading. The good news with the reading is that the answer is always in the passage. You don't use your general knowledge. You just have to find the answer. With the reading test, there are different types of questions. But these ones with the star, the good news is that they go in order. So the first question is near the top. Second question is a bit further down. Yeah, so these are all some of the different types of questions in the reading. This type here, true, false, not given, yes, no, not given, it's in every test and it's quite challenging. You can't, Carlos, you can't bring your own keyboard into the test. You have to use all the equipment that's provided by the test center. Yeah. Okay. So let's just have a quick try. This is an easy version of this type of true, false, not given question. Okay, so remember we have these three techniques that we need to use. First one is skimming. So what should we do? We should quickly look at the questions and then quickly read the information so we get a map in our head where the information is. So do the following statements agree with the passage? True, false, not given. Aboriginal Australians are descended from Adams in Africa, so 8,000 years ago. So I'm just looking at these questions so I get a rough idea what we're going to be reading about. Now I read the whole thing. Of course, usually it's much longer than this, but I read quickly, skimming to get the main points. I can highlight on the computer or underline, paper-based, the important dates, names, facts. So quickly skim through that. I'll just give you a minute. then you can try to, you can start trying to answer the questions, but have a quick skim through. But you have to train yourself to read quickly and roughly have an idea about what each paragraph is about, kind of a map in your head where the information is. Okay, so let's now, you've skimmed through the whole thing. Now we use our next skill, which is scanning. So we're trying to zoom in to where we think the information is. Remember that this true, false, not given goes in order. So the first question will be near the top. Aboriginal Australians are descended from inhabitants of Africa. So what are the key words that we're looking for? Descendant, inhabitants of Africa. So modern humans ventured out. So we know it's somewhere here. Ventured out of Africa, while ancestors were part of this migration. So is it true, false, or not given? So I see some people saying true. Yeah, the answer is true. It means the same thing. Aboriginal Australians were part of this, the people who came from Africa. Next one, ancestors of Australian Aboriginals settled in Australia, settled, so it's a key word, in Australia 80,000 years ago. Okay, so this will be further down. So is it true, false, or not given? So we have some false. Yeah, so they arrived in a single migration at least 50,000 years ago. So 50,000 and 80,000 is not the same. So it's false. Yeah, so settled and arrived is kind of a synonym. See, they try to trick you with this 80,000, but that's when they left. So yeah, this one is false. So next one, Aboriginal Australians are the most genetically diverse race in the world. So this will be further down here. So let's see. Genetic diversity, Aboriginal people in the East and West, culturally diverse. Anything about the world? No, right? So that one is not given. Yeah, so that's kind of how you do true, false, not given. But you need to start. You need to, what am I trying to say? You need to practice that. Yeah, so careful with these synonyms. Settled in Australia has the same meaning as arrived in a single migration. Careful with what they call distractors, which I call tricks. Genetic diversity does not equal culturally diverse. It's not the same thing. So some tips for reading. Yeah, so try to use this strategy. Skim everything first, then we zoom in to scan, and then we use our third skill, which is we check for detail. You can underline or highlight the key words. Yes, again, often they have, you can write 3 words or 2 words. Sometimes when you're reading, there'll be some strange words that you don't know. Don't worry, they're not usually in the questions. Reading is a race against time. If you get stuck on a question for more than about 45 seconds, then move on to the next one. Always, never leave an answer blank. If you don't know, just guess, because you don't lose a mark for a wrong answer. This is the same for listening. Just guess. Okay, so as you see, there's a lot to cover in the 4 tests. I mean, we could spend 2 weeks talking about everything. So when you're preparing for your IELTS, try to use English as much as possible. Also make a plan. So you do a little bit of test practice every day. You know, maybe just one part of a listening and some speaking. Next day, writing task 1 and some reading. Just build up your skills. Choose the test you need to do. You understand the scoring now, so now you really know what you have to give the examiner. Sometimes you want to do a course. If you go to the IDP website, you will see some IELTS courses that can support you as well. Yes, so building up your skills takes a long time. English, like language learning is not like, you know, 3-in-1 coffee. You can't just mix it up and it's done. You have to work on it bit by bit. Yeah, but just surrounding yourself with English really helps. And here are some resources. If you're doing your test with IDP, IELTS Essentials, you can get access to that, and there are lots of resources to support you. Also the IDP website. Yeah. So you might want to take a screenshot of this. How do you know false or not given? Okay, that can be confusing. So false means you can find the answer like the one about 50,000 and 80,000, but it's not correct. It's not the same. Not given means you just can't find it. There's nothing about that. Yeah, but they can be a little bit confusing. Okay, good. So we have, So we have 10 minutes at least for questions. And thanks so much for all your great questions during the session. And, you know, if you didn't get your question answered, we have question time now, I think. But thank you so much. So I'm going to stop my share.
Yes, thank you so much, Jackie.
Pleasure.
Yep. So before we begin our live Q&A session, just a gentle reminder to everyone that after the event, after the webinar, we'll be playing some videos, tutorial videos about IELTS on computer. So it includes how you will answer the listening, what can you do on the writing and on the reading part of the IELTS on computer. So if you have any pending question, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute your mic. Thank you. So let me just answer this question while waiting for anyone who wants to raise their question. Sorry, is there a dress code when taking the exam? I think you can answer that, Jackie, because I know you have a great idea about that.
Dress code? Dress code, yes. No. Remember with the test, you wear whatever you want. But I mean, they don't mark you on that, right? But my own feeling is, okay, first of all, for the listening, reading and writing, you want something that's fairly comfortable because you have to sit there for almost 3 hours and it might get cold, the air conditioning, so something to keep you a bit warm. For the speaking, you can wear whatever you want, but I think it's nice to wear something that makes you feel confident. So, you know, like when you go for a job interview, you wear something a bit nice to impress. You're not marked on it. It doesn't matter, but it might make you feel good. So that's what I think is nice to do. Someone's asking about capital letters in writing. Yes, writing, it matters. That comes under your grammar, under punctuation. So you must punctuate properly. Capital letter at the start of a sentence, full stops, commas, that matters in the writing, not so much in the listening and reading. Questions where the listening word one and a number is 24. Oh, okay. So there's a question like, what is considered one number? So a range of numbers like 21-24, that's considered one number. Yeah, I know it's a bit weird. Or a credit card number that's one number. Yeah. Cursive writing, you can write whatever way is comfortable for you. Yeah, whatever is most comfortable, and you can write quickly, whatever you like. Can you wear pajamas? I guess you could. It would be strange. The examiner might think you were a little strange, but if you really wanted to wear pajamas, I don't know, actually, depends on your country. They might not let you do the test because that's a bit unusual, isn't it? Yeah.
All right.
I think it's a bit odd.
Someone just raised their hand, but I think suddenly lowered the hand right away.
Everyone's so shy.
Okay, yeah.
I won't bite you.
We have Dwi Damayanti. Hi, Dwi.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Dwi.
Thank you for the challenge. I would like to ask about the speaking part, specifically part 3. So
yes.
How to overcome the difficult question for the part 3 if we don't know how to answer the question?
Yeah. Okay.
How do we respond to the question?
So the first thing is practice. So, you know, look around online for you know, common part 3 questions. You'll find all kinds of questions there. So practice so that you are familiar with all those kinds of topics that come up. So things like transport, education, health, entertainment. Remember that you don't have to be some kind of expert or some kind of lecturer. You just have to have opinions and examples. Okay, so if in the question, in the test, it's really you don't know how to answer, then say that and try. Okay, so just say, oh gosh, I'm really not sure how to answer that. I've never thought about that before. Because if you say that, at least you're speaking in English and you're speaking in a proper sentence, aren't you? But then have a try. Just try to talk your way through it. So, well, maybe this might happen. the thing about part 3 is you can't just do it instantly. You have to practice by thinking about all these topics that they ask you about and caring about what's going on in the world. So if you start following the news, it also helps you, because really the things that come up in part 3 are things that often come up in the news. Yeah, so if you're just regularly looking at the news, not like you have to study it, but just reading it and thinking about it, then you should be fine. I honestly feel like if you care about what's happening in the world, then you should be fine in part 3. Any human being who cares about our world and our planet, you should be okay in part 3, because it's just talking about important things in the world. Yeah, but thanks for your question. Good question.
Okay. So is it okay if we say, to be honest, I don't really familiar with the topic, then make some statement?
Yeah, but then try. Then at least try. It's fine to say that at first. Yeah, of course. But then at least have a try. Because if you just said, I'm not familiar with the topic, and you stopped, it would affect your score, because you can't really expand on it. Yeah. I mean, if you did it for one question, might be okay. But if, yeah. But a lot of it comes down to practice. Sorry?
Sorry. How about the signposting language?
Sorry, the what?
Signposting language, like
signposting. Okay, signposting language is good. Like, you know, first of all, but in part 2, we often use that in the long term, when you're talking about the topic. You know, say, first I'm going to tell you about my favorite restaurant. Next I'll talk about what the kind of food it serves. So that works well in part 2. But part 3 is more using your linking words. So, you know, you can say things like, okay, so in part 3, if you really don't know how to answer the question, there's kind of like a safe way to answer. You can just say a general statement. So something like, so if the question were, you know, do you think, what was that one we had about, do you think, well, how will education change in the future? You can say, the safe way to answer is you can say, well, I think there might be several changes to education in the future. General statement. Then you give your reason, first reason. First of all, I think education may change by having more artificial intelligence. Okay, and then I explain what I mean. So for example, who knows, there might be robot teachers or teaching assistants in classrooms very soon. Okay, something like that. Then I can give another reason. Another way it might change is, I don't know, a lot of remote learning, you know, like that. Does that help you? It's like very clear structure of answering.
So in shortly, so we may start from the general to the specific one.
Yeah, or you can just say a general statement and then give your reason and your example. It's a bit like what you do in the essay, actually. But you don't have to answer that way. That's only if you get stuck.
Okay. Thank you. That's crystal clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question.
Now let's move on to Zaira via Cervantos. Sorry. Hi, Zaira.
Hello. I have a question for Ms. Fisher. This is about the listening part, and I wanna ask about the names of people in the listening material that they're going to give us. So I'm aware that sometimes they would, or the spellings of the names would have like alternate spellings in British and American English, like let's say the name Sean. Like I understand in British English, it's usually S-E-A-N, whereas for some speakers of American English, they would spell it as either S-H-A-W-N or S-H-A-U-N, like in the name of Shawn Mendes. So in the exam, are we going to be allowed to use either spellings, or are we just, or do we have to just use the British spelling?
No. So basically, I've never actually, in the listening, they would not use an ambiguous name like that. And if they did use a name like that has multiple spellings, in the tape, they would say the person would say, oh, how do you spell that? And then they would spell it out. So they will only use names that are unambiguous, like John. Okay, but then, yeah, or like, yeah, usually or Jane or name like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it may be, yeah, I've never had that question before. So usually you don't have to spell out a name. Usually, and often in part 1, they will spell it out, like the Witten, you know, the one we just had. They'll spell that name out. You don't often have to write a name without the spelling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Sarah. Now let's proceed with Fel Joseph Cantor. Hi, Fel.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. I have a question. My question is, because in our review, we were taught about a specific structure of our academic writing task 1. We were taught that in our writing, we should have our intro, which is a paraphrase kind of intro from the given question. And then, and then I've seen here in your sample answer that the overview is towards the end or at the end of the sentence. Is it okay because we were taught to have an intro, overview or the summary, and then a body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2?
Yeah. So
which do we follow?
Up to you. Honestly, I think that way is better, actually. Put the overview near the top.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because the examiner is looking for the overview, so it makes it easier for the examiner. But some people prefer to put the overview at the end, which is also fine. It's optional, but you just must have the overview. And the overview has no numbers in it.
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much.
No worries. Great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Fel. Now, Veronica Fan, your turn.
Hi, it's me.
Hello.
Thank you for your lecture. I have a question about reading, and recently I've practiced an academic passage, and it says it's about true, false, not given question, and this is always difficult for me. The statement is most countries continue to prefer to trade with nearby nations, but in the passage it says countries still trade disproportionately with their neighbors. The answer it gives, I think it was true, but I'm confused because based on my understanding, I think this should be not given because it didn't say how many countries, all or many.
I think that's, if I can see you wrote it in the chat. So I think that's true, actually. I mean, they don't have to be, okay, don't get too obsessed as it has to be exactly the same. It's just that the meaning has to be generally the same. So if you think about it, I'm looking at it there. Most countries continue to prefer to trade with nearby nations. So countries that are close by, right? That's what it said. Then in the passage, it said, countries still trade disproportionately with their geographic neighbors. Geographic neighbors and nearby countries, that is the same meaning. It really pretty much is the same meaning. For IELTS, that's the same meaning. So that I would say is true.
Right, because I watched a tutorial before, and it says when the passage says like many countries, blah, 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 and the statement says most countries, blah, blah, and it should be not given because it didn't give specific percentage like that. So I was wondering.
Yeah, but the passage doesn't say that either, right? The countries still trade disproportionately with most countries still trade, I think so, most and still trade disproportionately. I think you can say that is also equivalent.
Oh yeah, so because it has still, so it sounds like many countries or most countries doing the same thing.
Still and continue, that's the same meaning, right? Continue to do it, still do it, that's the same.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, it's a good question.
Thank you.
No worries.
Next is Sylvie Kartikasari.
Okay, yeah, my name is Sylvie.
Hi.
I want to ask 3 questions actually. Is it okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. For the first question, I want to ask about writing. How we avoid same pattern repetition in our writing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's challenging. It takes practice, and I think what might be a good thing to do is look online for different like academic writing structures, because you're right. If you keep using the same sentence structure over and over and over, it won't really be, you can't get a very high score. So part of it is looking at model answers, ones that are considered very good, and analyzing the way they set up the sentences. You can also go on Google and look for like IELTS writing sentence structure practice or something like that. You will find there are so many materials out there which will help you learn how to structure the sentences in different ways. Yeah. Okay. But you're right. If you just keep using the same sentence over and over, it won't show that you know a variety of sentences.
Yeah, sometimes we can avoid the same word, but not the same pattern.
Structure, yeah. So I mean, really a good way to start is look at models and critically and analyze, like, okay, how did they set up that sentence? Yeah, but it also depends what band score you need. So if you're needing a 7 or higher, then yes, you do need to think about doing that a lot. If you're going for a 6, then it's not so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second is, how can we make an overview from 2 or 3 graphs with slight differences at each graph?
Okay, good. So an overview like the one we looked at also had 2. So you can, the simplest way so you don't get confused, the one that we looked at, they kind of compared across, but I personally find that quite confusing. So the simpler way to do an overview is just do a very brief overview for each graph.
So how can we?
So just say you have a, I don't know, like a pie, or just say you have a pie chart, a graph, and a table. So you would just say, you know, overall, the table shows this, and you know that whatever the trend is, the main trend in the table. You know, and then you might say similarly, then you're comparing, similarly the graph is this, and then, you know, the pie chart also shows this. So just in one sentence, kind of summing it all up with no numbers. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it. But it's not so common that you'd have 3 things. Not usually. Sometimes, but not usually.
But sometimes I found 3, not quite often.
Not so often, but I mean, it may be, yeah.
And then the last is in speaking. What happened when we misunderstand the question from?
Don't worry about that. So if it's in part 1 and you misunderstand, the examiner will just go on to the next question usually. If it's in part 3, the examiner will try to get you back onto the topic. They'll try to say it in a different way. The examiner should help you.
Okay.
Yeah, so don't worry if you mess it, if you do it a lot, you don't understand the question, of course it will pull your score down. But if in part 3 you don't understand one of the questions, it's really not a problem, because some of the questions are a bit complicated. Yeah, so that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for answering.
Thanks for your questions. Yeah. Some people are asking if they can go. Yeah, of course you can leave. But I'm just going to stay here and answer questions if people have questions. But if you need to leave, please, you know, it's been a long session and you've been so amazing and asked such great questions. So up to you, but I'm staying if people have questions.
All right, next one is Bruce Casal.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi. Just one quick question. It's about I would like to ask about strategy, I guess, on how to approach list of heading type of questions on the reading exam. I mean, that's one of those challenges, especially if it's on the passage 2 or passage 3, because mostly these passages that comes right after passage 1 would be like the longest and the most confusing. So any tips or strategies? I've done a lot of research on YouTube and with my review center, but I don't know. I just want to
so
hear it from you.
They are a bit challenging, the matching the headings to the paragraphs. They're always a bit tricky, and it's not in order, obviously. So my strategy, because I find them a bit tricky as well, my strategy is usually the first paragraph or even the first 2 paragraphs, it's hard to find the heading because those 2 paragraphs usually are more general. Then when you get further into the passage, maybe paragraph 3 and paragraph 4, it's easier because they become more specific. So if I feel like I can't get the heading for the first 2 paragraphs, I just leave it and then I look at these more specific paragraphs first. And then I'll go back. And then the other thing to remember is you have to, the heading has to cover everything, like the main topic of the paragraph, not just one small detail of the paragraph. So you have to be careful that you're recognizing what the whole paragraph is about, not just like one line of it. Do you know what I mean? And that's why they try to trick you a little bit there. So they're not that easy, those questions. But, and another thing to remember is in IELTS reading, the first paragraph is usually the topic sentence. So that should give you a clue what the paragraph is about. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're not the easiest. Yeah, they are a bit hard.
Exactly.
Maybe that will help you. That's my method anyway.
Especially if you get attacked with, I don't know, a list of headings type of exam. I mean, part of the test, and on the other parts as you progress there's like another match headings or this paragraph say about this, so any double of those would be like double kill.
but I don't know if you've just tried practicing that type of question. I don't know if that makes it easier.
I have. What I notice is it sometimes depends if the passage is something that catches my interest. If it's not, then there'll be a big trouble. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if you're doing academic or general, but if you're doing
academic,
so you can still get a 7 and make 10 mistakes.
That's right.
So you don't have to get every question right.
Right. It's just that my score has been erratic, so I've been getting like a lot of 6.5, and then it climbs to the 8 and then goes back to a 7. So it's kind of erratic.
Okay.
Right.
So it would be very valuable to really analyze what you're getting wrong and see if there's a pattern.
All right, that would do. Thank you.
Okay.
So next we have Farrell Reza. Hi, Farrell.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening as well. I have a question. For one of the parts when it's talk about the news, what if we encounter something that a topic that we never like heard before? Like how can I
you mean in the speaking in part 3?
Yes.
Okay, so they won't ask you about the news. I'm just saying it's good to follow the news because it covers all the kind of topics that they'll ask you about. But it will never be asking you like what happened last week in the news. That won't be like that. It'll be things like, like the questions that we saw, like maybe if it was health, it might be like, do you think healthcare will change in the future? There is a rapidly aging population in many parts of the world. What can be done in terms of healthcare? Things like that. Yeah, so it will be much more general.
Okay, I got it.
But yeah, so you don't have to know actual facts. It's not a general knowledge test. It's testing your English. Yeah, okay. But you do need to have opinions and ideas if you want a high score.
I see. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for this opportunity as well.
No worries. My pleasure.
Okay, now let's move on to Putri Natari Ratna. Hi, Putri.
Hello.
Hello.
This is actually Putri's friend, if that's okay.
No worries.
Okay, so I have some questions actually regarding the writing task part 1. So, to my belief is that writing part 1, there should not be any interpretation from ourselves. Is that correct?
That's for academic, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, for academic.
Yep.
But there's a case where the question is about like a map of a park and what changes
Yes.
it has. Yeah. But when like trying to describe something like a restaurant, is it like okay to say the children or the customers can go into the restaurant which is like located in the blah 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 to enjoy some food? Is that like something that is okay to be on task 1 or not?
Does the map show people going into the restaurant?
No, none at all. There's no context.
So yeah, you could probably say that. That's not really interpreting. Yeah, but you may not need to say that also. It would depend. Like to me, if the restaurant showed lots of people in it, then you might say that. Because it's not a descriptive writing, you know, it is descriptive in that you're just describing the changes, but you're not kind of like, you know, it's not creative writing.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
You know what I mean? So you
Yeah,
might say, you know, so it depends again with the map. If it has a compass on it, then you can use north, south, east, west, right? So if it has a compass direction on it, you could say, you know, previously in the there was empty land, you know, later on in the future, whatever year, a restaurant was constructed. And you could describe what the restaurant looked like. You could say, you know, it's a square restaurant, or it's a whatever kind of restaurant. Yeah.
I should be, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, but be
I
careful
probably
with the
better
map.
not go.
Yeah, but careful with the map too. Like if it doesn't have compass, like north, south, east, west, then you shouldn't use that. You should say to the top right, bottom left, center. Yeah.
All right.
Map, but you won't get
Can I have-
maps not that common. Okay, sorry, go on. Map doesn't come up so often.
Yeah, but you know, the example question I've been doing, I think I've been doing too much maps, and this
Yeah, because graphs are a lot more common than maps. Anyway, please, your other question?
Yeah, I think it's actually regarding second task of the writing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question like discuss the effects of globalizations on world's economics, like its positive and negatives, or yeah, the word some kind of like something like that, right?
Wow.
But,
globalization on the world's economy. Was that a real past question? A real question?
Yeah, the question actually, the literal question goes something like this.
From
Even
a
though
past paper?
globalization. Oh, sorry, what?
Was it really from a past paper?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have a
Oh.
compilation of the questions, but not really sure each one of those is from past
Okay.
papers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please read it.
Okay, so here goes. Even though globalization affects the world's economies in a very positive way, its negative side should not be forgotten. Discuss it. Yeah, that's how it goes. So
That doesn't sound like a real IELTS question to me. Sorry.
I see.
That is not usually how they're phrased. And that just sounds too like academic, like that you'd have to be studying economics to be able to do that question.
I see. There we go.
Yeah, like the ones that, yeah, I don't know. So I wouldn't, okay, but if you, what was it again? Globalization helps the economies discuss, or there are a downside. What was the next bit?
Yeah, just discuss.
Discuss. See, they don't usually, they wouldn't just say discuss. That's not an IELTS type of instruction. So I think that's not a real question. If you want to find the real questions, if you go to the IELTS.org, that's the official website, you'll see some real, or you get the Cambridge past papers and they have the actual past questions. So a lot of websites don't have real questions there. Yeah. Yeah, so that question is way too hard.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
Well,
so don't worry about it. Chuck, throw that one away.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, that's basically it for me.
Okay,
thank you very much for your good answers, right?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Putri. I think, are you okay with 2 more questions, Becky?
Sure.
All right. Can we have Satrio Tandang? JY, Satrio?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, I'm from Indonesia. I have a questions regarding writing sessions. Based on my experience that when we have the writing sessions, we have like an opportunity to use the reducing in adjective clause, or maybe omitting in other clause, or like a hyphen, and also maybe using inversions form to the writing. I think maybe do you recommend that we can use those forms so it maybe can improve our scores or not, like that?
It's hard to say, like, because the examiner won't look like, oh, there's a lot of hyphens, that's great. It's like, it's overall, do you know what I mean? So if you use those forms as part of a variety of different structures, yeah, of course, that's good. But you don't have to do it like, oh, I need 3 of these and 2 of these. It's not like that. Yeah, and it's also, you shouldn't get obsessed with those forms. The most important thing is to have good reasons and examples. The content is important. Yeah. And then how you express it. Yeah. But of course, if you can have a variety of sentence types and sentence structures, yes, of course, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the second questions. Maybe regarding the writing part 2. Sometimes we have questions that maybe exceeds our knowledge, like when I have a questions related to outer space, that I think it is very weird from my background or my routine, so I cannot express the answer regarding the questions. Maybe you have any tips to ask if the questions is very maybe beyond our.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of, there is some element of luck. Like sometimes you get a question that that you're familiar with, or you're very interested in that topic, and sometimes you get one that you're not that keen on it. Like, so for me, I would like that one about outer space, but if you gave me a question about driverless cars, I'd be like, oh, boring. But we just have to do what the essay says. The most important thing is, what are the instructions in the essay? Is it asking your opinion? Is it agree and disagree? Is it asking you, like, what are the causes? What are the solutions? And then we just have to train ourselves to think of ideas that are relevant. But you don't have to be some kind of scientific expert. So if the question was something about outer space, and it said, some people think this is a good idea and some people think it's a bad idea, and then you said, discuss both views and give your opinion. So you have to train yourself to think, well, is it a good idea for us to explore outer space? Think of reasons. So you have to train ourselves. So why might it be a good idea to explore space? We could maybe find other planets with different resources. Maybe we can understand our own planet better. So there's some reasons. Then why might it be bad? It's a waste of money. We should focus on our own planet. It might be dangerous. Yeah. Okay. So we have to, these kind of reasons are fine. And
Okay,
then
okay.
then we just have to think of examples. Yeah. So you don't have to be, don't worry about being some kind of expert. You just use your common sense.
Yes, okay, I get the point.
But it's true. It's true that we have to train ourselves to be able to think of these reasons quickly. And that's why I keep saying the same thing like a broken record. Start following the news. It really helps.
Sure. Yep. Thank you for your suggestions.
Sure, thanks for your question.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And then last question from Angeline Liu. Hi, Angeline.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, Jacqueline.
Hi.
Thank you so much for sharing. It was a very good session.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm talking about the general writing task 1. Okay, because in the example given, you actually talk about places in the UK. So, in the context of if we are staying in Singapore, can we use make it like a localized Singaporean location?
You mean in the letter?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
General writing task 1.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, of course you can use your own context. Totally fine.
It doesn't have to be a real place, right? We can
No.
so
So that letter example is just all made up. The places, Newtown or whatever is just, yeah. You don't have to use your own name. You can make it all up, but it just needs to sound real, like it could be real.
Okay, so
like don't do it from Mars or something like that.
Yeah. So the other question is, under what circumstances do we have to write a formal letter for task 1 general writing?
So when you don't know the speaker, so always look at how they tell you to start. If it says, "Dear Sir" or "Madam," that's going to be more formal.
Because I'm quite confused, like the example given, we actually don't know the manager in a transport company.
Yeah, so that one's more formal. I mean, I'm just saying, I think I'm going to change my slide because it always causes a big headache. You can think of it as formal. It's fine to think of it as formal, but just don't be old-fashioned, that's all. Because some people will say, "Dear Sir or Madam, my esteemed sir, I bow down to you. I am so grateful for your blah, blah, blah." And it just sounds very unnatural.
So
do you know what I mean? So think more about how you write formal email, that kind of tone, like professional. That's what I mean.
Not the very extreme.
Yes, no extreme. Also, because if you think about it, people in Western countries are generally not as formal. They're a bit less formal.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe just think professional.
Okay. The other question is like, how much practice do we have to put in to improve a band? Like how many hours of practice or how many essays you have to practice writing? Like, do you have a general guideline?
People ask me this question all the time. So it's really hard to answer that because it depends what band score you're at now and what band score you want.
Like if you want to from a band 6 to a 7.
It also depends on what your issues are. Like, so some people get a band 6 because they didn't really understand how to do it properly, and actually their English is very good. And so once they know what to do, then they're fine. Other people, their English is not at a very high level, then it will take a lot longer. But it takes about, working really consistently, it takes about 6 months, I think, to go up half a band.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, because it depends. But then you see, I can't really say that for everybody. So maybe what's a good idea is, if for a person who has done the test a few times and can't get the score, it's probably good to go and work with a tutor or have some lessons. And that teacher can help the person to understand where they're going wrong and how long it's going to take. Yeah.
Okay, so when is the time that they change the topic? Because from what I heard, like there will be during this period of time where it's similar topic, and there will be this time
Change
of
the
the year where
topic.
they will change. Yeah.
Every test has different topics. Is
Oh,
that what you
but-
mean, or speaking?
Yes, yes, correct.
Speaking, they'll change the questions about every 6 months. But the thing is that for speaking, there are at any one time there are about 50 different topics that you could get. So it's impossible to memorize all of them, really.
So even if you focus on certain topics to study, it's not really a good idea.
You mean? Well, it's good to look at the themes, but you don't have to be an expert, right? It's not like you have to have facts and dates and all that up your sleeve. It's better to know how to answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah. And just be curious about what's going on in the world, because all the questions will be, things that are just happening, like trends in the world, basically. But that said, it's good to look at the questions that are recent writing questions or speaking questions that are being used at the moment. It is good to look at them so you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last question is, if we finish and you sometimes can go to the toilet.
Oh, once they do finish the listening test, then after that you can go to the bathroom if you need to. You can't leave during a listening test. And then speaking test is only 14 minutes, so you wouldn't want to go to the toilet in the speaking test. You can't. You're not allowed to.
In between the different components, you're allowed to go to the toilet.
You can go to the toilet once the listening test is finished. You can go to the bathroom anytime, but you will be accompanied.
I think let me just elaborate that further,
Yeah.
Jackie.
Yeah,
so
sure.
for the entire listening test, no one is allowed to go for a toilet break. And then there is no toilet break while instructions are being given and during the last 10 minutes of the test. So that means the next component, the next skill will be reading, right? There will be an instruction, and when the timer begins from 60 minutes, then that's the only time you can go for a toilet break. And you will be accompanied, and then after that, the last 10 minutes of the reading part of the test, you will not be allowed to go for a toilet, and then proceed with writing. Instruction first. After the instruction has been given, 60 minutes on, then that's the only time you can go for a toilet break.
So at any point of time you go to the toilet, you actually waste your own time.
You are using your own time. Yes, you're right.
But if you finish earlier, you could actually go to the toilet.
What do you mean by earlier? Is it after the last component, which is the writing part?
Either the writing or the reading.
Even the reading part, last 10 minutes, you are not allowed to go for a toilet break. So the sequence for listening, reading, and writing is listening first, followed by reading, followed by writing. So if you finish earlier, let's say 11 minutes before reading, then you can still go to the toilet. 10 minutes before the end, no one. And then reading part, you will not be allowed to go for a toilet break, or you will not be allowed to leave the test room even you finish earlier, because there is still instructions towards the end of the writing components.
Then try not to go to the toilet. Okay.
You may, but only on the first 60 minutes up to the last, let's say 49 minutes, I would say, or 50 minutes. And then last 10 minutes, no one is allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, try not to go. Don't drink too much before the test.
Because it's going to be cold, so yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much, Angeline. And then, yes, before
Yeah.
any final word or final advice from our IELTS expert, I just would like to call on the attention of our co-host and co-moderator. Rudy, are you still with us?
Yes.
All right. Okay, because there are like questions been arising every now and then since the beginning of this session. So the first question is the test center providing pencils and erasers? And the second one is the test center for IELTS on paper provide headphones? Can you please provide more information if they will take the IELTS test at your test center in Indonesia?
Alright, jadi ada yang menanyakan apakah di setiap tempat tes yang ada di Indonesia menyediakan pensil sama alat tulis yang lain. Iya, kami menyediakan, tapi untuk jumlahnya tidak banyak atau terbatas. Jadi kita sarankan untuk membawa alat tulis sendiri. Pertama untuk menghindari adanya kontak terlalu sering, karena kita nggak tahu kan untuk ya kita tetap jaga untuk kebersihan alat-alat yang kita gunakan dalam tes, tapi lebih baik atau lebih amannya kita sarankan untuk membawa alat tulis sendiri bagi para peserta. Terus untuk yang kedua, pertanyaan mengenai listening di masing-masing lokasi. Untuk paper base saat ini di Indonesia kita menggunakan speaker ruangan. Kita tidak menyediakan untuk headphone pada jenis tes paper. Kurang lebih seperti itu. Thank you, Lilet. Is there any other questions?
So far, that's all. Thank you so much, Ruli. And how about Anu from Thailand?
Yes.
Yes. Would you mind to please provide more information? Same question. Is your test center in Thailand provide pencils and erasers? And what about the headphones for the IELTS on paper?
Yes สำหรับประเทศไทยนะคะเราก็จะมีเฮดโฟนส่วนตัวให้ผู้สอบทุกท่านนะคะเราก็จะมีกระดาษนะคะสำหรับโน้ตรวมไปถึงดินสอแล้วก็ยางลบให้นะคะเพราะฉะนั้นอย่างที่แจ้งไปตอนแรกค่ะสิ่งที่ต้องเอามาก็คือมีแค่ในส่วนของบัตรนะคะอาจจะเป็น ID card นะคะหรือว่าอาจจะเป็นพาสปอร์ตก็ได้แล้วก็น้ำนะคะซึ่งน้ำเนี่ยก็จะต้องเป็นขวดแบบใสเท่านั้นนะคะส่วนแจ็คเก็ตก็คือเอามาใส่ได้นะคะสำหรับคนที่กลัวว่าจะหนาวแต่ว่าทางเราก็จะมีการเช็คก่อนนะคะว่าในแจ็คเก็ตเนี่ยไม่มีอย่างอื่นแอบแฝงเข้ามาค่ะ Thank you
Thank you, New. And then for Myanmar and on the rest of the participants, I think I will just answer that. For all paper, definitely for all computer, IELTS on computer, pencils, I will be provided. And then also a headphone for the listening test. And then for those who are in Philippines, and then Thailand, yes, Thailand. And then also Singapore, most of this test center, they provide headphones, and if you were informed to bring pencils during the test, please do so, or before the test, please do so. All right, so hopefully that helps. Any final word or final advice from you, Jackie?
Oh, no, thank you. I just wish you all the very best, and thanks for all your curiosity and your great questions and your interest, and for sticking with me and the whole team. And as always, I'm very grateful to the whole team for organizing and supporting this webinar. Yeah, amazing team. And you'll be in good hands doing your IELTS with IDP. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely evening.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jackie, for answering all the questions from our participants. And if anyone has still any pending question, please feel free to drop us an email, and then we will reply on that accordingly. And thank you so much to all my co-hosts, Ruli from Indonesia, New from Thailand, Wei from Myanmar, for answering and helping us along the way to answer all the questions in the chat box and in the Q&A section as well. And yes, so that's all for tonight. For those who will have their IELTS on computer or who are still undecided, you may want to stay with us. We will play IELTS tutorial or IELTS on computer tutorial videos. Thank you so much and best wishes. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Lila. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
and prepare for computer-delivered IELTS. For each section, there's a clock at the top of the screen, which tells you how much time you have left. For the reading and writing tests, the clock will turn red and flash when you have 10 and 5 minutes left. The tests will automatically stop when the time finishes. The instructions for each part are in the box at the top of the screen. You can use the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen to move from one question to the next. Click on the number to go to that question. You can also click on the forward arrow to go to the next question, or the back arrow to go to the previous question. When you have answered the question, a line will appear under that question in the navigation bar. You can click on Review if you want to look at the question again later. The question number will be shown as a circle. You can review and change your answers at any time until the end of the test. Click on the yellow arrow if you want to make the navigation bar smaller. You can use the scroll bar to see all the questions. In each of the tests, you can change the screen settings. To do this, click on the Settings tab at the top of the screen. You can change the size and colour of the text. In each of the tests, there is a Help tab. If you click on the Help tab, this will give you information about the task you are currently doing. If you click on Test Help, you will see information about how the test works. If you wish, you can also highlight sections of text. If you need to leave the test room for a few minutes, you can hide your screen by clicking on the Hide tab. When you return to the test room, click on the Resume Test button. That is the end of the introduction tutorial for computer-delivered IELTS. Check out the IDP IELTS YouTube channel for tutorial videos for listening, reading and writing. For the listening test, you can change the volume by using the volume bar in the top right at any time during the test. For each part of the listening test, you will hear the recording once only. Some parts of the test have more than one type of question. Each type of question has its own instructions. In the listening test, listen carefully for the part number and question numbers to make sure you are looking at the right screen. For some questions, you need to write your answer in the gap. For some questions, you need to choose which diagram label, A, B, C, etc., is correct for which item listed in the table. For each question, click on the correct space in the table. For some questions, you need to click on an answer and move it into the gap. If you want to change an answer, move another answer into the gap. If you want to leave the question unanswered, move the question back. And for some questions, you need to move an answer into a gap on a diagram. At the end of the listening test, you will have 2 minutes to check all of your answers. The tests will automatically stop when the time finishes. In the reading test, the text appears on the left and the questions on the right. To see all the text and the questions, you'll need to use both scroll bars. For some questions, you need to choose an answer. If you want to change your answer, click on a new answer. If you want to leave a question unanswered, click on the answer again. To look at the next question, just click on the question itself. For some questions, you need to choose more than one answer. If you want to change any of your answers, click on the answer you want to change and then click on your new answer. If you want to leave any of the questions unanswered, click on the answer again. For some questions in the reading test, you need to choose which paragraph or section contains the information listed in the table. Remember to scroll to read all the text. For each question, click on the correct space in the table. If you want to change an answer, click on your new answer. If you want to leave the question unanswered, click on the answer again. For some questions in the reading test, you need to click on a heading for a paragraph or section and move it into the gap. If you want to change your answer, move another heading into the gap. If you want to leave the question unanswered, move the heading back. And for some questions, you need to write your answer on a gap in a diagram. If you wish, you can also highlight sections of text. To do this, left-click and drag your cursor over the section of text or question you wish to highlight. Then right-click and select the highlight option. To remove highlighting from the text, right-click on the highlighted area and select Clear. If you wish to remove all highlighting from the screen, right-click on a highlighted area and select Clear All. You can also make notes on a section of text. To do this, left-click and drag the cursor over the section of text or question you want to make notes about. Then right-click and select the Notes option. Your chosen section of text will be highlighted and a yellow notepad will appear. You can write your notes on this. Click on the cross in the notepad to hide your notes. To see your notes again, click on the highlighted section of text. If you want to see which areas of highlighted text have notes, move the cursor slowly over each area of highlighted text. If a small orange box appears, it means that the highlighted text contains notes. To remove notes from text or questions, right-click on the highlighted area and select Clear. There are two parts to the writing test. Part 1 and Part 2. You can answer the parts in either order. You write your answer in the space on the right of the screen. Your answers are saved automatically. You do not need to press Enter on your keyboard. For the reading and writing tests, the clock will turn red and flash when you have 10 and 5 minutes left.